Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we're heading back nearly 5,000 years to the dusty, sun-blasted city streets of ancient Sumer. You've got the late afternoon glow of the Mesopotamian sun on your skin, the scent of roasted barley hanging in the air, and the low, rhythmic hum of temple drums echoing off clay brick walls. You're hot, you're tired, and you're already kind of regretting that extra bowl of lentils from lunch. But there's good news. Because right around this time of day, the workers start to shuffle out of the ziggurat shadow and toward the taverns. Simple, reed-roofed huts, where beer flows from clay jugs into slightly cleaner clay mugs, and everyone seems just a little too happy to see you. That's right, you've arrived just in time for what historians now cheekily call the world's first happy hour. Except, you probably won't survive it. Not just because of the scorching heat, or the bacteria-laced river water, or the fact that nobody's invented deodorant yet, but because this stuff they're calling beer, it's unfiltered, bubbling, room temperature, and thick enough to chew. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, the dusty ground hot enough to cook flatbread. A stray goat watches you pass with the bored disapproval of someone who's seen too many clueless time travelers try to fit in. Around you, the city of Ur spreads like a sunburn. Low buildings of mud brick, narrow alleys, and terracotta drain pipes. That don't really drain. But for all the sweat and stink, there's something comforting here. Maybe it's the rhythm of the people. Maybe it's the way the air smells like barley and damp earth. You pass a pair of scribes arguing about something. In cuneiform, they're slapping clay tablets like it's a heated PowerPoint presentation. One of them looks up at you, frowns, then returns to his stylus with a harumph. Clearly, you're underdressed. No linen kilt, no beard oil. Rookie mistake. But never mind. The tavern, if you can call it that, is just up ahead. It's more of a lean-to, really, wedged between two houses and shaded with reeds. The seating? A few uneven benches and a log. There's no bar counter, no menu, and definitely no bathroom, unless you count the alley out back. Still, there's a line forming. And everyone is holding something. A wide-mouthed clay mug with a built-in straw. This is your first lesson. Sumer, beer isn't just a drink. It's an institution. It's currency. It's nutrition. It's social glue. And, most importantly, it's safer than water. Kind of. Because the water? It's pulled from the Euphrates, shared with laundry, livestock, and less mentionable things. Beer, by contrast, is boiled, fermented, and spiced with herbs like dates or coriander. The result? A warm, frothy porridge that smells slightly like old bread but won't give you cholera. Probably. You sit on a bench beside a merchant who's already halfway into his third cup. He leans over, eyes bloodshot but twinkling, and says something that sounds like a toast. You nod. It seems the polite thing to do. The drink is ladled from a clay vat the size of a bathtub, its surface littered with floating grain husks. A woman with a sharp voice and stronger arms scoops it out for you with a gourd ladle. You raise your mug. The merchant raises his. You both sip. It's an experience. Thick, like broth, slightly sour, yeasty. It coats your mouth in a way that reminds you you're drinking your calories tonight. This isn't a beverage, it's survival. But after a few sips, something changes. The bitterness gives way to a subtle sweetness. You start to notice a cooling breeze coming off the alley wall. Someone's playing a lyre, gently, under their breath. You relax your shoulders. Around you, the mood is warm. Work is done. No one's talking about taxes or crop yields or brick quotas. Just small things. How the goddess Inanna brought rain last night. how someone's neighbor saw a snake with two heads, how barley prices might rise unless they fall. There are no clocks here, no timers, no email chimes, no just checking in messages from middle managers. Just the sun, slowly sliding toward the horizon. A child runs by with a piece of bread, as big as his head. Someone laughs too loudly and spills beer on their toes. The merchant beside you taps your shoulder and offers you a dried fig from his pouch. You take it. It tastes like molasses and sand. For a moment, it hits you. This ritual, this gathering, this simple act of sipping beer in the company of strangers, it's the oldest version of what you know as grabbing a drink after work. Happy hour isn't a modern invention. It's one of humanity's most ancient instincts, to pause, to connect, and to momentarily forget that tomorrow is going, to be just as sweaty and exhausting as today. Historians still debate just how happy this hour really was. Some argue it was more survival than celebration, a way to get calories and hydration in a world without refrigeration. Others suggest it was deeply spiritual, tied to offerings and community rituals. But there's one thing they agree on. The Sumerians drank. Often, and they did it together. The sun finally dips below the rooftops. The sounds of the street soften into coos and distant drums. Your mug is empty now, save for a few stubborn grains clinging to the bottom. You look around, at the warm glow of oil lamps, the dust catching golden in the last light, the quiet laughter of people whose names you'll never know, and for a strange, beautiful second, you feel completely at home. Section 2. You wake up the next morning, if we can call it morning, on a woven mat in the corner of the tavern. Your mouth feels like it's been stuffed with cotton soaked in old soup. The beer, charming as it was last night, has left a hangover that hums softly behind your eyes. Someone's already sweeping outside. A donkey stares at you from the doorway with something resembling judgment. Welcome to daybreak in Sumer, where the streets are already alive with the rhythm of civilization in full swing. And yes, we're going to do it all over again. But, to understand why the happy hour even happened, why the beer flowed, why the taverns were full, we need to rewind your blurry, grain-slick brain a few centuries. Because this wasn't just people looking to kick back. No, the happy hour was born from the bones of a new kind of world, one where farming, not foraging, ruled the day. You step into the street, blinking against the heat already rising from the bricks. Around you, everything smells like mud, sweat, and grain. Not the worst, honestly. Now imagine this. It's about 5,500 years ago. A few scattered settlements along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates begin to realize that wild grasses can be domesticated, controlled, grown with intent, cultivated in these flat, flood-fed plains that seem made for wheat and barley. And just like that, the Sumerians pivot from gathering to growing, from wandering to settling, from chaos to schedule. This shift, known in modern terms as the agricultural revolution, was more than just planting seeds. It changed everything. Suddenly, you had surplus. You had grain stored in baskets. You had time, glorious, dangerous time, to think, to plan, to write, and, of course, to brew. That's right, the first beers weren't made by accident, though, honestly, a lot of the best ancient inventions were. No, these early brews came from necessity, creativity, and maybe a little divine intervention. The Sumerians believed Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, gave them the recipe herself. She even got her own hymn/brewing manual, which included helpful tips like how to mix the sweet wort with the honey and the cooked mash with cool water. Charming, mysterious, also a little unsanitary by today's standards. But you get it. Beer wasn't just something you drank, it was a gift from the gods. Liquid divinity in a mug, which explains why even temple priests got in on the action. And here's where things start to ferment in more ways than one. As agriculture bloomed, cities sprouted. Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Eridu, the Mesopotamian League of Extraordinary Civilizations. You suddenly had marketplaces, taxes, paved roads, and, wait for it, daily schedules. It turns out that once you're farming and storing and selling, your life starts to organize itself around work, around effort, around measurable output. Sound familiar? The Sumerians invented more than the happy hour. They invented the work day. Yes, historians still argue whether this early structuring of labor was centralized or more organic, but one thing is clear: people were expected to put in their hours. Whether building temples, hauling reeds, or scribbling cuneiform onto little clay post-its, Sumerians toiled, from sunup to sundown. And when the workday ended, they didn't go home to scroll through proto-TikTok or microwave leftovers. No, they went to the beer huts. But not everyone drank the same thing. You wander through the marketplace, past a stall selling dried fish that smells like despair, and into the storage zone behind a temple. Here, tucked away in giant clay vessels, is the real stuff: temple beer, reserved for rituals. Richer, sweeter, filtered with straw bundles to catch the grain husks. This wasn't what the average worker sipped after ditching their brick mold. The street beer was a different breed, thinner, more sour, often mixed with herbs or dates to mask the flavor. Think ancient kombucha with more calories and fewer Instagram influencers. And the class divide? Oh, it showed. Elite priests and administrators got the fancy brew. Commoners, soldiers, and scribes shared communal vats like soup kitchens with slightly better vibes. Even the distribution was tiered. Laborers were sometimes paid in rations of beer, measured by the cash, a standard unit of fermented goodness. You can imagine how that looked at payday. Congratulations, here's your jug. Please don't spill it on your sandals. Quirk of the day. One Sumerian text includes a complaint letter written on a clay tablet by a man named Nani, who's furious about receiving substandard copper from a merchant. But beneath the lines of grumbling, you get the sense that what he really wanted was a beer. Because even back then, after a bad day of trade negotiations, what else is there to do but drink and grumble? Now, here's a fringe theory that hasn't fully settled. Some scholars believe the beer huts may have doubled as matchmaking venues. The original dive bars, if you will. Imagine it. A bustling space, dimly lit by oil lamps, filled with the aroma of barley porridge and wood smoke, where young people could sneak glances over the rims of their straws. Sumerian Tinder. Swipe right if their sandals don't smell. Too bad. You duck into one of these smaller taverns where the ceiling is barely high enough to stand. A few early drinkers are already whispering stories about strange omens in last night's dreams, about a merchant who tripped and fell into the river, about the stars aligning in some suspicious way. This, too, is part of happy hour. The exhale, after the grind. The soft murmur of humanity unwinding itself. The irony, of course, is that in creating civilization, the very structure and rules that push us to labor and toil, the Sumerians also invented the need for release, for rituals of forgetting, for little windows of indulgence. And that's the contradiction you carry now, standing in the fading light with your second mug in hand. Civilization demands much, but every demand births its own rebellion. Tonight, that rebellion is lukewarm beer, and a very good story about a goat who snuck into a temple and refused to leave. Section 3. You lean back against the rough mud brick wall of the tavern, cradling your third, or maybe fourth, mug of grainy beer. The chatter around you ebbs and flows like a sluggish tide. Someone laughs too loud. Someone else hiccups and mutters about taxes. A young boy runs past the open doorway chasing a clay hoop, the sound of his feet slapping the packed earth fading into the twilight. And just like that, you realize something. The Sumerians didn't just invent beer and the workday, they invented the social space that brings people together after the workday. That, in between time, neither work nor sleep, where stories are swapped, grievances aired, and friendships cautiously fermented. But you are not in any ordinary spot tonight. This tavern, it's run by a woman, and that's not unusual. In fact, it's historically accurate. Sumerian taverns, known by the word cash houses, were often managed, owned, and staffed by women. And not just any women. Sometimes these beer mistresses were connected to temples, sometimes they were business-savvy entrepreneurs, and sometimes, well, they were a little of both. One foot in the sacred, one in the secular. Kind of like a pub and a shrine had a baby. The most famous of these ladies? Siduri. She appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, yes, the world's oldest known epic poem, and she's the divine alewife who advises the grief-stricken Gilgamesh to chill out, take a bath, enjoy life, and, yes, drink beer. Fill your belly with good things, she tells him. Day and night, dance and be merry. A whole mood, honestly. The presence of women in these drinking spaces is part of what makes Sumerian happy hour unique. In later societies, the pub became more of a male domain. But here, it's refreshingly egalitarian. Women drink, women serve, women profit. Historians still argue whether this was a matter of female empowerment or a byproduct of economic necessity. But either way, the result is unmistakable. Taverns are one of the few places where social boundaries bend. You watch as an older woman, with silver-threaded braids, slaps a wooden ladle into a clay cup with the authority of a judge. Her voice rises above the rest, scolding, storytelling, perhaps both. Everyone laughs. It's clear she runs this place and no one doubts it. And this isn't just a beer shack with a roof. There's order here, structure, maybe even rules. In one corner, a thin tablet is mounted into the wall, covered in small, wedge-shaped cuneiform characters. It's not decorative. It's a list of prices, portions, maybe even acceptable conduct. The Sumerians, practical as ever, believed in documenting everything. Your hangover tomorrow? Probably already recorded in triplicate. These clay tablets are part of why we know so much about their daily life. The Sumerians invented writing, after all, not for poetry or prayers, but for bureaucracy, for keeping track of grain rations, beer shipments, temple offerings, and tax records. It's gloriously petty, and it's why we have cuneiform tablets documenting how much beer different classes of workers received, down to the fraction of a jug. Fun fact, a high priestess might get 2 liters a day. A regular laborer? About 1. Children, half a liter. That's right, Sumerian kids drank beer. Don't panic, it wasn't the IPA level stuff. More like nutritious barley soup with a buzz. Your childhood Kool-Aid just got outclassed. There's a tablet from the city of Umma listing detailed beer allocations for workers building a temple. Their pay is measured not in coins, but in cash, a unit of beer. Imagine logging hours on a spreadsheet today and being handed a couple growlers every Friday. Honestly, not the worst system. But, of course, not everyone approved of this brewing bonanza. As beer grew more common, some voices, usually elite scribes or temple moralists, started expressing concern. There are surviving texts that warn about the dangers of too much drink, of loose tongues, of disorder. Do not pass your days in the tavern, one scribe writes. Do not waste your time with the alewife. Classic buzzkill energy. There's even a fragment that hints at taverns being associated with sedition. Whispers against the king. Rumors about priests. Accusations about temple greed. Because naturally, if you give people a communal space, a little buzz, and something to complain about, they'll start talking. Loudly. You sip again, listening to the voices rising around you. It's not hard to imagine that happy hour, far from just a casual social break, served a deeper purpose. It was the Sumerian water cooler, yes, but also their parliament, their therapist's office, their whisper network, and sometimes, maybe, their dating app. You remember last night, a young man handing a dried fig to the tavern's serving girl with exaggerated ceremony. She rolled her eyes but took it anyway. Was it a tip? A joke? A courtship ritual passed down through generations? Of awkward grain brewers? Who knows? But it worked, because a moment later, she brought him a larger-than-usual mug with a crooked smile. Historians still argue whether taverns were considered respectable. Some texts suggest they were semi-legal, tolerated but frowned upon. Others hint they were fully integrated into city life, even taxed and registered. The truth is probably somewhere in between, depending on the city, the ruler, and whether the local alewives were behaving themselves. One thing's for sure, people came to these places because they needed more than just calories. They needed community, release, laughter, a place to share myths, make deals, and poke gentle fun at the gods. You look up as the tavern door swings open again. A dusty scribe walks in, still clutching a stylus in one hand. He orders a mug and slumps into the corner, exhausted but visibly relieved. His job today? Probably tallying sheep or tracking tax grain. Maybe engraving another "don't drink too much" tablet. The irony doesn't seem lost on him. As the evening deepens and the stars scatter across the velvet sky, a man begins to sing softly in Sumerian. You don't understand the words, but the melody is round and soothing. The kind of tune that only appears when bellies are full and hearts have loosened, and just like that, happy hour becomes holy. Not because of rituals or sacrifice, but because for one brief, barley-scented moment, everyone breathes easier, laughs louder, lives more fully. All, thanks to a humble bowl of fermented grain. Section 4. You wake, sort of. Not with a jolt, but with that hazy halfway consciousness that comes when the air is warm, your belly is full, and your brain is still a little buzzed from beer that tastes like liquid granola. You're still on the tavern floor, slouched against a woven reed mat, and the fire has burned down to embers. Somewhere, a donkey brays into the night. You blink, but outside, Sumer is just starting to stretch again. The thing about ancient cities, especially ones like Uruk, is that they never really sleep. Not completely. There's always someone baking, pouring, sweeping, hammering. You step into the alley behind the tavern, rubbing your face with the hem of your robe. The sky is just beginning to pale, and then you hear it. The unmistakable thump-slosh of fermentation pots being stirred. Ah, yes, brewing time. If last night showed you how people used beer, today's going to show you how they made it. You follow. The smell. Tangy, warm, somewhere between oatmeal and vinegar, down a narrow corridor to a cluster of low buildings. Here, the magic happens. Only it's not really magic. It's math, timing, and a decent understanding of how to let grain rot just enough to taste good. The Sumerians didn't write out recipes like we do today, but through trial, clay tablets, and beer-fueled devotion, they figured out a method that worked. A cornerstone of their process was a substance called bapir, a twice-baked barley bread that acted as the base for the brew. Think beer croutons, if you're feeling fancy. They'd soak this bapir in water, sometimes with added dates, or honey, and let the mixture ferment over time. Natural yeast from the air would get in there, chew up the sugars, and create alcohol. No hops, no carbonation, no cold storage, and yet what came out was nutritious, hydrating, and just strong enough to take the edge off your brick hauling day. One fringe theory suggests some of these early brewers, especially the temple-linked ones, may have even used hallucinogenic herbs to spice up the mix. There's no solid proof, but if your beer god has horns and a tail and keeps whispering stock advice, maybe go easy on the next round. You duck into the shade of a brewing area and watch as two women knead soaked beer with long wooden paddles. Their hands are strong, quick, efficient. One sings a low rhythm to keep time. Around them are tall clay vats, each inscribed with marks to track their contents. The symbols are simple but effective: grain, date, time, strength. One pot has a squiggle that looks suspiciously like a yawning man, possibly a joke or a warning. Historians still argue whether brewing was considered a sacred craft or just practical chemistry. But the involvement of temples suggests there was something deeply respected, even ritualistic, about the process. Some priests believed beer was a gift from the gods, literally. Ninkasi, the Sumerian goddess of beer, had her own hymn, not just praise poetry. It's actually the oldest surviving recipe for beer, hidden in a song. Picture it: a group of brewers singing a work chant that just so happens to contain their entire brewing methodology. Clever, right? Especially in a culture where literacy was limited to elites, but everyone could memorize a catchy tune. You can't help but hum a few bars of the translated lines. You are the one who waters the malt set on the ground. You are the one who spreads the cooked mash on large reed mats. Ninkasi, you are the one who pours out the filtered beer of the collector vat. It is like the onrush of the Tigris and Euphrates. Not exactly Billboard Top 40, but honestly, it slaps. And it's not just about production. It's about storage. Sumerians stored their beer in tall, stoppered jugs. Some of them had narrow necks and clay plugs. Others were left open, covered, in linen. One interesting detail: you didn't just pour this beer into a cup. It was often too thick and unfiltered, so people drank it through long straws, some made of reeds, others with metal tips. Think boba tea, but ancient and with fewer tapioca balls and more floating barley bits. You crouch beside one pot and peek inside. The mixture is cloudy and bubbling gently. A tangy scent curls up into your nose, and you wonder, how did they know? When it was done, there were no thermometers, no alcohol content tests, just eyes, noses, taste buds, and probably a few trial-and-error accidents. One tale tells of a temple worker named Enlil-Z, who accidentally let a batch ferment too long, resulting in a brew so strong it knocked out an entire shift of priests during a midday ritual. Was that real? Hard to say, but you can bet someone wrote it on a wall somewhere. Behind you, the older brewer mutters and tosses in a handful of crushed dates. Sweetener. Not for flavor, necessarily, but to feed the yeast. The Sumerians didn't know why it worked. They didn't have microbiology, but they knew that it worked, and for them that was enough. In fact, they knew enough to designate beer quality tiers. Some brews were for the gods, high-end stuff, rich and sweet. Others were for nobles or temple elites. And then there was the everyday worker's beer, watery, filling, barely alcoholic, the sports drink of its time. You pass a tablet on a nearby bench, recently etched. It shows beer allocations for a team of city laborers. Their names, quantities, and jobs: canal digger, granary guard, temple cook. Each gets their daily portion. No one complains. After all, beer is currency, sustenance, and morale booster rolled into one. As the sun rises higher, a group of men begins loading finished pots onto sledges. This batch is heading to a feast, perhaps for a harvest ritual or maybe a wedding. In Sumer, celebrations were incomplete without beer. Contracts were signed over mugs. Deals were sealed with shared straws. The brew wasn't just liquid, it was a bond, and for many it was a kind of daily reward, a post-sunset treat, a reason to tolerate the oppressive heat, the stinking canals, the endless temple audits. As you lean against the kiln-warmed wall and close your eyes for a second, the world blurs again. The heat, the smell of yeast, the faint thrum of someone preparing reed straws nearby. The first happy hour? It didn't happen in a bar with neon lights and half-price margaritas. It happened here, with thick beer, wooden benches, gossiping brewers, and a hymn to a goddess who probably never drank. A drop herself, and if you're lucky, you'll get to sip from the next batch tonight. Section 5. The heat is mounting now, pressing down like a wool blanket soaked in soup. You shuffle away from the brewery, arms slightly out to avoid your tunic clinging too closely, and the air smells like ferment, sweat, and, oddly, roasted goat. That's because you're nearing the market, and in Sumer, markets aren't just places to trade clay jars and figs, they're soundscapes, a never-ending concert of squawks, haggling, drumming, and the occasional screaming child who doesn't want lentils. But tucked among the spice vendors, the fishmongers, and the guys aggressively selling amulets that definitely protect you from crocodiles, there's something else, the first signs of a social phenomenon beginning to evolve. The casual communal drink. You find yourself watching a cluster of laborers huddled around a low bench made of stacked bricks and old mats. In the center sits a large clay jar, half submerged in a pit of sand to keep it cool. 5 reed straws poke out like lazy antennae. No labels, no branding, no ice cubes, just a shared jug and the silent agreement that no one backwashes too much. This, historians suggest, is the earliest ancestor of something we now call happy hour. And just like today, it's not really about the drink, it's about the pause. These men work on canal crews, judging by the river-stained hems of their robes and the reddish clay still caking their forearms. They aren't just rehydrating, they're decompressing. One man rolls his eyes as he mimics his foreman's nasal voice. Another lets out a bark of laughter that startles a nearby chicken. You recognize that look in their eyes. It's the look of someone who's just done enough for one day and now deserves 15 minutes to pretend they aren't one spill away from yelling at a supervisor. You sidle into a shady corner and observe. No one's drunk. Not really. The beer here is light, more porridge than Pilsner, but there's a looseness in their shoulders, a slow rhythm to their gestures that says, the workday has ended, and the evening is not yet a problem. Across the square, a woman sets down a jug next to a weaving stall. She's older, and her back curves from years at the loom, but she still smiles when a younger woman joins her with 2 straws and a wink. They take turns sipping and watching people pass by. You get the sense that this has become their ritual. Some scholars debate whether these public drinking moments count as true leisure. After all, the beer was often part of the wage. Was it really recreational if it was rationed? But others argue that the intent matters more than the transaction. When people begin to choose when and with whom they drink, you're no longer dealing with mere sustenance. You're dealing with culture. And Sumerian beer culture wasn't just domestic, it was public-facing. Take the Sabbatum, for example. Roughly translated, a day of rest or celebration, tied to the phases of the moon. Some historians suggest these proto-weekends involved religious ceremonies. Yes, but also communal feasting, and of course, drinking. Imagine a lunar calendar not just telling you when to pray, but when to party. And the taverns, you remember those from last night, weren't isolated dens. They were urban fixtures, usually run by women, and often sat right by the busiest walkways. Some even had murals or signs, carved symbols, advertising their offerings. The equivalent of a chalkboard menu outside a gastropub, only here. It might show a barley stalk, a jug, and a smiling face. Quirky detail. At least one surviving tablet features a tavern scene with a monkey drinking beer. Scholars debate whether this was satire, mythology, or just someone's bizarre idea of a mascot. You pass another group huddled in an alley, this time with a musician. He's plucking at a small lyre made of wood and gut string. The tune is off-key, but the rhythm is strong, and one of the drinkers begins to hum along. This isn't a concert. This is the background music of their version of happy hour. And here's the thing. These moments aren't just recreation. They're transmission lines, gossip spreads, business deals are floated, marriages are hinted at, complaints are aired, softened by barley froth and shared body heat. One might say this is where real decisions start, even if no cuneiform tablet will record them. You lean against a clay wall, letting the cool shade calm your skin. And that's when you spot it, a small wooden token being passed from one man to another. You've seen these before. They're beer vouchers, literally. Bits of wood, etched with symbols, handed out by employers or temple officials. You bring it to a tavern, and they give you your ration. It's like a gift card from 3200 BCE, only less plasticky and way more biodegradable. Historians still argue whether these tokens were tied to personal identity. Did the tavern know who drank what, or was it all anonymous? Were some tokens worth more? Did people hoard them like rare Pokemon cards? There's no consensus, but it's clear that beer became entangled with the very mechanisms of labor, reward, and downtime. And through it all, something is emerging. An unspoken understanding that when the work is done and the jug is full, you are allowed, no, expected, to pause. The shift from pure necessity to structured leisure is subtle, but it's happening right in front of you. A child darts past, barefoot and laughing, chased by a dog with only one ear. A merchant stretches out on his rug and sips quietly, his eyes closed. Someone in the distance begins playing a frame drum, steady as a heartbeat. And above it all, the sun hangs heavy, but softening now, turning golden as it slides lower toward the horizon. This is not a break in time. This is time. You sit down, finally. Someone offers you a straw. You take it. The beer is warm and grainy, but somehow perfect. Section 6. The reed straw hovers in your hand, still slick with the shared breath of strangers. It's oddly comforting, this little relic of barley and spit diplomacy. You tip your head back for one last sip, then stretch your legs, careful not to kick over the shared jug, which at this point contains little more than foam and good intentions. The sun has shifted. Shadows grow longer, threading between mud brick walls and pushing the day gently toward its next chapter. But you're not ready to go home yet. And frankly, neither is anyone else. Because now the real magic begins. Storytelling hour. Not the official kind. No priest with a scroll. No royal herald booming proclamations about war or taxes. No, this is the low-slung kind. The kind past. Between gulps of beer and half-chewed mouthfuls of roasted grasshopper. Here, in the cooling corners of courtyards and alley taverns, the Sumerians gossip, joke, and whisper their lives into shape. You lean against a crumbling brick wall and catch a cluster of elders chuckling over something. One of them, face leathery from sun and wisdom, taps the clay rim of his cup and begins a tale. It's about a time when the gods walked the earth disguised as cranky travelers. Spoiler, they tested people's generosity, and one poor soul, who offered nothing but flat beer, ended up turned into a donkey. There's laughter, snorts, and a healthy amount of eye-rolling. You'd be surprised how often donkeys appear in Sumerian morality tales. Then someone else chimes in with a rebuttal, a variation where it's not the gods but a crafty merchant in disguise, and instead of a donkey, the punishment is eternal. Hiccups. The argument escalates into mock seriousness, arms waving, clay mugs sloshing. It hits you. This is memory-making. This is myth in the making. Historians still argue whether such oral storytelling served mainly as entertainment or whether it was a vehicle for soft governance, a way to subtly reinforce the values the temples and kings couldn't always enforce. By decree. You suspect it's both, because in between the humor and the hijinks, these tales carry warnings, blueprints, and lessons disguised in laughter. Take the one about the bricklayer who tried to cheat his coworkers by watering down his beer. He ends up buried under his own unfinished ziggurat. "That's why you always double-check your jugs," someone says with a wink. The group laughs again, but it lingers longer than necessary, and you realize the message has landed. And these aren't just local tales. There are wandering bards, too, if you can call a man with a harp and a suspicious chicken a bard. These travelers bring in tales from faraway cities, Ur, Eridu, Lagash, stories of bizarre festivals, cursed clay tablets, and mythical beasts with improbable digestive issues. One particularly popular tale tonight features the goddess Inanna descending into the underworld. But instead of focusing on the spiritual allegory, the storyteller spins it as a cautionary tale about borrowing dresses from your sister and refusing to return them. Inanna's cosmic struggle becomes a sitcom about sibling rivalry. A few younger women laugh until they snort, elbowing each other knowingly. This is what makes happy hour in Sumer more than just grain slop and sitting around. It's collective, dreaming. A time to stitch fantasy and frustration together with beer foam and bravado. You notice someone sketching with a stick in the dirt near the fire pit. Not a child, but a young man with quick fingers and a wild imagination. He's illustrating the donkey tale from earlier. Crude lines, yes, but expressive. You can see the ears. A little puff of smoke to show divine punishment. The others cheer him on. There's a joke that he should get a job engraving tablets. Everyone laughs except one man who mutters, "Careful, priests don't like satire." Quirky detail. There's a fragment of a clay tablet unearthed in Uruk that shows what might be an early comic strip. 4 panels. A man drinks, then falls, then gets kicked, then drinks again. Some scholars insist it's just inventory gone. Wrong, but you know better. Humor, it seems, has always existed alongside hardship. Nearby, a small scuffle breaks out. Not fists, just loud voices. 2 men arguing over which city brews the best beer. One insists Nippur has more barley. The other claims Lagash beer gives dreams with better gods. A third yells something about his cousin vomiting in Eridu. Classic, someone mediates by offering both parties a sip from his own cup. Tension dissolves into shoulder punches and another round. Conflict resolution via shared inebriation. Still, a viable strategy, honestly. But here's something curious. Even though alcohol is everywhere, you rarely see anyone fully sloshed. Drunkenness in Sumer is a tightrope. Too little, you miss the fun. Too much, and you become the story instead of the storyteller. There's a Sumerian proverb that goes, "He who drinks too much is like a donkey chasing its own tail." It's both imagery and instruction, and it echoes tonight, subtly. No one wants to be that guy. Not here, not with tomorrow's work looming just beyond the firelight. A breeze cuts through the alley and the temperature finally dips. You feel your body relax. The tension behind your eyes eases. You are, for once, just part of the human noise. No expectations, no transactions, no divine mandates. You don't even realize your eyes have closed until someone nudges you with a half-eaten fig. "Your turn," they joke. "Tell us the one about the goat that learned to write." You blink, then smile, and begin. Section 7. You open your eyes slowly, feeling the faint weight of the clay jug still cradled in your lap. The murmur of the crowd pulses gently, a steady hum of voices weaving around the flames. You lean forward, ready to share the tale of the goat who learned to write, a story both absurd and oddly inspiring. In Sumer, animals in stories weren't just animals. They were vessels of lessons and laughter. The goat's story is no exception. This particular goat supposedly picked up a stylus one day and started scratching symbols on a tablet. Some say it was an omen, others just a clever farmer's joke. Either way, it's a beloved story to remind you that wisdom can come from the most unexpected places, or creatures. You begin, your voice soft but clear, and the crowd leans in. The goat, the story goes, was named Giddim, which means ghost or spirit in Sumerian. Giddim was known around the village for his mischievous antics, stealing crops, sneaking into the granary, and once, according to some witnesses, outsmarting the village herder in a game of hide-and-seek. Then one day, the village scribe, a man who was part poet, part accountant, left his tablet unattended. Giddim, curious as ever, nibbled the stylus and somehow managed to make marks on the soft clay. The resulting scratches resembled primitive cuneiform, but with the random charm of a goat's hoof. You tell the listeners about how the villagers, unsure whether this was a divine sign or prank, debated endlessly. The priest insisted it was a message from the gods. The scribe grumbled about the ruined tablet. The children laughed and started imitating Giddim's writing. Historians still argue whether this tale originated as a parable on the invention of writing or as a cautionary anecdote about animals interfering with sacred tasks. Some propose it was an early satire on bureaucracy. After all, even a goat could produce writing. So why were the scribes so special? You pause to sip your beer, the cool bitterness smoothing the edges of your voice. Now, this story isn't just funny. It's oddly comforting. It reminds you that even in the structured, complex world of early civilization, chaos and humor coexisted. That invention, progress, and tradition often mingle with the ridiculous and unexpected. And that's something that resonates today. You see it whenever you accidentally send a text to the wrong person, or when your pet steals your laptop keyboard. The ancient world was full of moments like these, imperfect, unpredictable, and entirely human. The night deepens as other tales take their turn. One elder begins recounting the origin of beer itself, how the goddess Ninkasi's hymn doubled as a recipe, turning sacred words into liquid gold. You imagine ancient brewers humming prayers as they coaxed barley and water into magic. Nearby, a group debates whether beer was invented to make water safer or simply because it made life more tolerable. The argument is good-natured, full of puns you'd expect from a group of people who invented the word ale. You note the odd detail that Sumerians might have used fermentation not only for drink, but also as a preservation technique for bread and even fish sauce. It's not just about the buzz, it's about survival, creativity, and flavor. In the background, a young woman plays a lyre, its soft strings adding a lullaby-like rhythm to the storytelling. You realize this might be the world's first happy hour soundtrack. Gentle. Music, shared stories, and beer, all blending into an atmosphere of ease. As the moon rises higher, the crowd shifts, the energy mellowing into a slow, collective sigh. Conversations soften, laughter turns to murmurs, and eyes begin to droop. The perfect setting for a sleepy YouTube viewer. You remind yourself how lucky you are to glimpse this ancient moment, where invention met leisure, where beer and stories intertwined, and where the first happy hour was born out of necessity, community, and a shared craving for connection. One last joke breaks the quiet, about a man so fond of beer he tried to marry his favorite mug. The crowd chuckles, eyes twinkling, before drifting toward their homes and dreams. You stay a moment longer, savoring the sounds, the smells, the gentle weight of history settling around you like a soft blanket. Section 8. The sun creeps lazily over the horizon, casting long golden fingers through the reeds lining the Euphrates. You find yourself once more at the bustling heart of Uruk, the city pulsing gently awake after the night's revelry. Your senses are greeted by the soft clatter of pottery, the earthy aroma of fresh bread, and the low hum of early merchants setting out their wares. It's in these quiet moments before the day fully stirs that the spirit of Sumerian invention quietly hums beneath the surface. You settle yourself on a worn stone bench near a cluster of date palms and recall how the Sumerians cleverly turned their beer-fueled gatherings into a sophisticated social ritual. Today's story drifts toward the communal spaces called the Ekur, temple complexes that weren't just places of worship but vibrant centers for socializing and storytelling, the ancient equivalent of your favorite cozy pub. As you lean back, the storyteller's voice from the night before echoes softly, reminding you that these gatherings, often soaked in barley ale, served multiple purposes. Beyond merriment, they were spaces where business deals were struck, marriages arranged, and politics quietly played out between sips of frothy brew. You smile at the thought that the phrase "happy hour" might have had its first meaning here. Regular time carved out from the rigors of daily toil, dedicated to relaxation, laughter, and shared human connection. The Sumerians understood that productivity and pleasure were not enemies, but dance partners, balancing the harsh realities of irrigation, harvest, and city management. Historians still argue whether these social drinking hours were scheduled events, or spontaneous celebrations inspired by successful harvests or religious festivals. Whatever the case, it's clear these moments shaped the communal fabric of Sumerian life, much like your Friday night ritual with friends or that favorite bar down the street. One quirky fact sneaks into your mind. Some Sumerian clay tablets include records of beer rations not just for workers but also for children and even temple animals. Imagine a little kid clutching a tiny cup of beer. Don't worry, it was more like a mildly fermented, low-alcohol gruel, hardly the stout you sipped today. Nearby, you overhear a conversation about beer brides, women who brewed beer, professionally, and often enjoyed elevated social status for their skill. Brewing was an art, a science, and a livelihood, sometimes passed down through families for generations. You imagine these beer brides as the original craft brewers, their recipes guarded like treasured heirlooms. The Sumerians' innovation didn't stop at drinking rituals. They invented the first known written recipe for beer, carved into clay, in cuneiform script combining poetry with practical instruction. It's a gentle reminder that art and utility danced hand in hand, much like your playlist of soothing background tunes accompanying your favorite beverage. You muse over the idea that happy hour wasn't just about alcohol, but about slowing down time, weaving together music, food, laughter, and storytelling to ease the mind and soul, a universal human desire echoed across millennia and continents. As the marketplace stirs to life, you gather your thoughts, feeling the ancient rhythm, sync with your own heartbeat. The Sumerian happy hour was more than a drinking event. It was a cultural cornerstone, a reminder that even in the dawn of civilization, people needed moments to pause, connect, and simply be. You watch a group of children scamper past, chasing, a ball made of woven reeds, their laughter a timeless soundtrack to the scene. Somewhere in the distance, a lyre's gentle notes begin again, inviting you to lean back and lose yourself in the flow of stories, history, and the simple joy of being. Section 9. The day drifts lazily onward, and you find yourself wandering through the narrow streets of Uruk, the air thick with the mingling scents of baked barley bread and fresh dates. You pause near the marketplace, watching as farmers and craftsmen barter with a gentle hum of conversation. It's in moments like these, amid the everyday bustle, that the true social magic of the Sumerian happy hour reveals itself. You remember that the happy hour was less about drinking fast and more about savoring company and conversation. The communal beer was served in large clay vessels called pithoi, and friends would gather to share from the same cup, a ritual that built trust and camaraderie. This shared drinking custom was an early form of social glue, binding people together through mutual respect and gentle humor. Interestingly, some tablets hint that these gatherings might have included rudimentary games and contests. Think of a laid-back pub quiz, minus the microphone and buzzers. Historians still argue whether these were spontaneous amusements or organized events by the temple authorities to foster community spirit. As you meander through the stalls, you notice vendors, selling clay whistles and small musical instruments. Music, it seems, was as essential as beer in setting the mood. A soft melody played on a lyre or a drum's steady beat could elevate the atmosphere from casual chat to a soothing celebration, a precursor to today's live music nights. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some beer recipes included the addition of dates, spices, and even herbs thought to have calming properties. The Sumerians may have been unknowingly crafting early happy hour mood enhancers, combining the effects of mild alcohol with natural relaxants. You muse on how the beer itself wasn't particularly strong, more like a thick, sour porridge, and think how that made it perfect for slow sipping during long conversations. It was a communal act, not a race to oblivion. Women played a significant role here too, not just as brewers but as central figures in these gatherings. Some historians propose that these beer-sharing rituals doubled as social equalizers, where class lines blurred briefly over a shared cup. But others suggest the elite might have reserved certain brews or spaces for themselves, highlighting subtle social hierarchies even in relaxation. Your thoughts drift to the rituals surrounding these happy hours. Were there songs or poems recited? Did the air fill with soft laughter and the exchange of gentle jabs or witty stories? The Sumerians had a rich oral tradition, and it's easy to imagine the temple courtyards echoing with such warmth. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over mud brick walls, you feel a soft calm wash over you, the kind that only comes from the simple pleasures of community and shared stories. You realize that the Sumerian happy hour was much more than beer and conversation. It was an ancient balm for the soul, a deliberate slowing down of time to appreciate life's small moments. You find yourself wanting to raise a cup alongside these ancient revelers, to toast the timeless human need for connection, laughter, and a little happiness at the days. And Section 10A's twilight deepens, you settle into the softer rhythms of Sumerian life, moving from the bustling market to the quieter, more intimate spaces where happy hour truly unfolds. These are the courtyard gatherings, tucked behind thick mud walls, where families and friends recline on woven mats, the flicker of oil lamps casting dancing shadows on carved wooden panels. You imagine the clink of simple clay cups passing hand to hand, the gentle murmur of voices weaving stories that span generations. In these moments, the ancient concept of happy hour wasn't about escaping life's pressures, but embracing the soothing rituals that brought people together in shared humanity. A fascinating detail to consider, archaeological finds suggest that some homes included small alcoves dedicated to brewing and sharing beer, showing how central this practice was to domestic life. The role of women here is especially notable. Often the master brewers, their skills were highly valued, with recipes passed down like treasured family heirlooms. Historians still debate how much public social drinking was a mixed-gender affair, or if some gatherings were more exclusive. You sense the intimacy of these gatherings, the kind of slow, gentle socializing that's perfectly suited for winding down. It's not raucous or loud, but full of quiet laughter and comfortable silences, punctuated by the occasional storytelling or a shared song. The Sumerians had a soft spot for humor. Clay tablets contain jokes and riddles, and you can almost hear them whispered over the faint clatter of cups. One quirky tidbit. Some evidence suggests that beer was used in medicinal practices too, often mixed with herbs believed to ease aches or improve sleep. So happy hour might also have been a way to gently soothe the body and mind after a hard day's work. Imagine unwinding not just with a drink, but with a subtle herbal lullaby. You reflect on the cultural significance of the setting. Unlike the hectic pace of modern life, these communal hours were framed by ritual and respect, offering a collective pause. Perhaps this ancient happy hour was more mindful than ours, a practice of presence long before mindfulness was a trend. You feel the softness of the evening breeze, the calm embrace of shared stories, and the lingering sweetness of the drink, all blending into a timeless tapestry of connection. It's easy to see how such a ritual could have helped anchor communities through centuries of change, from floods and wars to shifting kings and gods. As your thoughts drift with the fading light, you appreciate the delicate balance the Sumerians struck between work and rest, sociality and solitude, tradition and joy. You take a deep breath and almost hear the soft clinking of cups inviting you back to this ancient, gentle, happy hour, where time slows, laughter floats lightly, and the simple act of sharing becomes the truest form of happiness. Section 11, you wake slowly to a new day in ancient Sumer, but the echo of last night's happy hour lingers like a soft melody in your mind. The sun filters through the reed-thatched roofs, casting warm light on the bustling cityscape of Ur, where life hums steadily onward. Today, you're drawn to the temple precincts, the spiritual heart of the city, where rituals and festivals sometimes intertwined with the communal drinking traditions you've come to know. The temples weren't just places of worship, but vibrant, social centers, and here, happy hours took on a slightly different flavor. They were occasions tied to religious festivals, honoring gods like Ninkasi, the goddess of beer herself. Offerings of beer flowed freely, not just as libations, but as shared gifts among the faithful. You imagine the temple courtyards filled with soft chants and laughter, where sacred hymns might blend with the clinking of cups. Here's a quirky twist. Some clay tablets include what could be called the earliest known beer recipes, painstakingly recorded instructions that suggest brewing was a sacred art, almost like alchemy. You can picture the temple brewers as ancient mixologists, experimenting with barley, dates, and local herbs to perfect their brew. Historians still argue whether temple-based happy hours were more about community bonding or religious devotion, but the two likely blended seamlessly. After all, in Sumer, the sacred and the social were rarely separate spheres. You might find yourself sharing a drink with a priest or a farmer, united by the common language of good company and a well-brewed beer. You pause to consider the gentle humor that might have flourished here. Even in solemn settings, the Sumerians had a lightness of spirit. Jokes inscribed on tablets show that humor was a valued relief from daily toil. Imagine, if you will, a priest slipping a cheeky quip about the best barley harvest or the quirks of the gods into a conversation over beer. It's a reminder that even in ancient times, laughter was a crucial ingredient of relaxation. As you wander these sacred spaces, the delicate balance between reverence and revelry becomes clear. These gatherings weren't just about indulgence, but about weaving community, honoring tradition, and finding joy in shared moments. You sense the fading light and the soft call to rest, but the memory of this sacred happy hour stays with you. A reminder that even thousands of years ago, people understood the power of pause, of connection, and of a well-timed toast. Section 12, you drift through the bustling streets of Uruk now, the largest city in Sumer, feeling the pulse of early urban life surround you. Here, the happy hour tradition expands beyond the domestic and temple walls into the taverns, modest establishments where laborers, scribes, and merchants gathered. These taverns, though simple, played a vital role in the social fabric, a place where the city's diverse inhabitants could relax and connect after the day's hard labor. Picture the smoky interior of a tavern, smaller than a modern bar with low benches and rough-hewn tables lit by oil lamps casting a warm glow. The air is thick with the sweet scent of fermented grains and the earthy aroma of baked bread. Conversations hum quietly, punctuated by soft laughter and the clatter of clay mugs. You realize these taverns weren't just for drinking. They were the original social networks where news, gossip, and stories flowed as freely as the beer. A curious fact. Some tablets show that tavern owners issued beer tokens, early versions of drink tickets, indicating a surprisingly organized system. For transactions, you can imagine the tavern keeper tallying tokens on a wooden board, a low-tech version of our happy hour specials. It's charming to think that even back then, folks enjoyed a good deal. Historians still debate the extent to which taverns were open to all classes or if social divisions kept certain groups apart, but evidence suggests that these spaces were more democratic than the rest of society, a melting pot of voices sharing stories and laughter. This kind of communal unwinding probably helped ease tensions and fostered a sense of belonging in a rapidly growing city. One playful detail to imagine. Scribes, known for their serious work of record-keeping, might loosen their stiff collars here, exchanging witty anecdotes or composing impromptu beer-themed poems. It's the ancient equivalent of the office happy hour banter, just with cuneiform tablets rather than smartphones. As the evening progresses, the tavern's atmosphere shifts into a gentle hum. No wild partying, just the calm ebb of human connection, the kind that slowly soothes the soul and invites peaceful rest. You sip an imaginary mug, feeling the lineage of communal joy stretching from these humble taverns to the quiet, happy hours of your own time, connected by the simple pleasure of shared company and a well-crafted drink. Section 30T, you find yourself wandering toward the quieter outskirts of the city, where the Sumerian homes offer a more intimate glimpse into daily life. Here, the happy hour takes on a gentler tone, a ritual between family members or close friends, rather than the public celebrations of temples or taverns. Imagine a modest courtyard with woven mats laid out, clay vessels brimming with beer, and the aroma of freshly baked flatbread mingling with the evening air. In these homes, happy hour was less about volume and more about connection. Families, gathered to share stories of the day, pass down legends, and find comfort in each other's company. The children might be tucked away, the adults exchanging quiet laughter and thoughtful conversation. You can almost hear the soft murmur of voices blending with the distant call of night birds. A lesser-known detail. Some archaeological finds suggest that women played a central role in these domestic happy hours, not only brewing the beer, but also orchestrating the social rhythms of the household. This challenges earlier assumptions that Sumerian public life was dominated solely by men. Instead, you see a more nuanced social fabric where women's contributions to community and culture were vital, especially in crafting moments of leisure and relaxation. Historians still argue about the exact nature of these domestic gatherings, whether they were purely for pleasure or had deeper symbolic meanings tied to fertility and prosperity. Regardless, the peaceful atmosphere you imagine here is palpable. Consider the soft humor that might have enlivened these evenings, a playful tease about a sibling's failed attempt to brew a new flavor, or a light-hearted complaint about the stubborn barley harvest. It's these small human moments that bring history to life. As you settle into this quiet space with your imagined family, you feel the timelessness of happy hour as a gentle pause in the relentless rhythm of life, a sacred breath that invites you to relax, reflect, and savor the warmth of togetherness. Section 14, you are now transported to the spiritual heart of Sumerian society, the temple complex where religious ceremonies weave into daily life. Here, happy hour takes on a ritualistic hue, blending relaxation with reverence. Picture the cool stone courtyards filled with the scent of incense and the soft chants of priests. After the solemn offerings to gods like Enki or Inanna, temple workers and worshippers might share a communal drink to honor the divine and celebrate the day's blessings. This sacred happy hour was a time to unwind while still feeling connected to higher powers. Imagine the flicker of oil lamps reflecting off carved reliefs as stories of gods and creation are whispered or sung. The mood is contemplative yet comforting, a gentle lull that blurs the boundary between the earthly and the divine. An intriguing detail. Some tablets hint at the use of special brews infused with herbs believed to promote clarity or calmness. These were not just ordinary beers. They were carefully crafted elixirs meant to prepare the mind for prayer or meditation. This mix of sacred and social drinking illustrates the complexity of Sumerian culture, where enjoyment and spirituality intertwined seamlessly. Historians still debate the extent to which these temple gatherings functioned as social events versus purely religious rituals. The evidence suggests a blend of both, making them unique spaces of communal bonding and spiritual renewal. Picture a priest quietly joking with a novice about a botched offering, or a group of worshippers sharing an ironic smile over the unpredictable behavior of a sacred goat. These moments remind you that even in ancient temples, life had its lighter side. As the night deepens, the temple's happy hour fades into serene silence, leaving you with a sense of peace and connection, not just to people, but to something greater than yourself. Section 15A's. The night draws to a close. You find yourself in the quiet gardens that fringe the city, a serene retreat where the day's noise softens into whispering breezes through date palms and the gentle rustle of reeds by the river. Here, in these peaceful green spaces, the happy hour tradition reveals its most tranquil form, a moment for solitary reflection or intimate conversation beneath the stars. You imagine reclining on a simple woven mat, the cool earth beneath you, a clay cup of the day's last beer in hand. The hum of cicadas lulls you deeper into relaxation as you watch the constellations emerge. Orion's belt and the Great Twins, familiar markers for farmers and stargazers alike. It's in this quiet that the Sumerian happy hour fulfills its ultimate purpose: to slow time, to ease the mind, and to welcome restful sleep. A gentle curiosity. Some scholars propose that these garden gatherings were linked to early forms of mindfulness or meditation long before such practices were formally recognized. Sumerians may have intuitively understood that a calm mind after a shared drink helps the body prepare for restorative sleep. The blending of nature, social ease, and ritual here feels timeless. Historians continue to explore how much these moments were consciously designed versus simply natural responses to daily rhythms. But from your place in the garden, you can feel the wisdom in this practice, a soothing harmony between human needs and the cycles of day and night. You might smile, remembering the occasional playful challenge among friends to name the stars, or recite favorite myths, gentle laughter mingling with the night sounds. These tender exchanges remind you that happy hour was never just about the drink. It was about connection, stories, and the comfort of shared human experience. As you cradle your cup and close your eyes under the vast Sumerian sky, you carry forward the ancient gift of happy hour. A pause to breathe, to laugh, and to unwind, offering a soft landing into sleep's embrace. Now, as we gently close this journey, feel the calm spreading through your body, the slow fading of the day's busy rhythms into the soothing quiet of night. The laughter, the stories, the shared sips, they all settle like soft shadows, wrapping you in warmth and peace. Let your thoughts drift like the gentle breeze through those ancient date palms, your mind untethered and serene. Remember, this tradition, born thousands of years ago, continues in your own quiet moments of rest, the simple pleasure of connection and calm, a timeless balm for the soul. Breathe deeply and let the stillness cradle you. Now, rest easy. The world of Sumerian happy hours has faded into dreams, and so shall you, carried softly on the currents of history and comfort. Sweet dreams.